We've lost the art of giving like a subtle little look and picking up on it.
Should they be living together? Is that a really great test?
Younger Nick had moments where I realized what I'm saying is not all that interesting.
Don't reach out to me if you XYZ. No, don't put that in your profile, no.
The women, we need to learn how to drop our hanky.
I know I just dropped the bomb.
Rose,
I dropped
please.
a bomb. I'm dropping the bomb.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Intentional Dating. And today we have on the show Rose Sweet and Tanner Kalina. Now, Rose is a pioneer in divorce healing ministry. She is an author, a wife, a mother, and a life and relationship expert and coach. And Tanner is an author and influencer in the Christian space who has his pulse on the way we use social media to interact and even use it as a shield for tougher or more vulnerable kinds of conversations we may or may not want to have. Tanner, Rose, thank you both so much for being here with us today.
This is great.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Really, what we want to talk about today, first and foremost, is putting yourself out there, that concept. How do we do it? Why is it important? All of these things. So maybe the first place for us to go is, what do we need to do to put ourselves out there to get known, to come across people who could potentially become a partner, a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend?
I think you need to be self-aware of who are you and what do you want? Because before we get out and go somewhere, it's like, is that the place we want to be? Is that where the people we want to be with, is that where they are? So I think self-awareness is really an important step before you jump out, is to say, who am I? What do I want? Where am I going? And where is he or she likely to be? And then when you can nail that down, then you can jump. Then you start looking for where that is and go. Do you agree, Tanner?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say start with knowing who you are, because then you can know what you're actually looking for. We have so many desires that swell up in us at any moment, and some of those desires are shallower than others. Some of them are deeper than others. And if you don't ever spend time with yourself and in silence and in communion with God, then it's hard to be in tune with those desires, and you'll be following maybe one on a whim, which could lead to, the whole spread of bad outcomes it could lead to. But really knowing yourself, knowing your heart, knowing your desire, knowing what you're looking for, knowing how you respond in relationships, knowing what you would like in a relationship, all these things are of the utmost importance.
Yeah, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. What is a good time frame for somebody to get back out there, whether they've been, straight out of a divorce or a really impactful breakup, or maybe a death of a family member or something like that, like some traumatic event? What is a good time frame for them to start getting back out there?
Well, I would say a minimum of 1 year.
Wow.
But the caveat is, what do you do with that year's time? Yeah, and as Tanner said earlier, come back to your faith and who you are in God and why you're here and what you're really looking for, and spend that time, whether it's a year or more or less, spend that time revisiting who you are, where you want to be, what you did wrong on your part in the past relationship, how you can get better help, how reevaluate and get a new plan to get back out there. Yeah. Because I've done both of those. I've jumped right back in, and I did that when I was much younger. I just wanted to be in love. I wanted to have a husband, home, and kids, and I was jumping around from lily pad to lily pad like a frog. Are you the one? Are you the one?
Yeah.
And I never really stopped and thought, who am I and what the heck am I doing here? And I really hurt myself and a lot of people in the process.
Building off what Rose said, I would say, until you've experienced the transformative healing power of God, which I think a year at minimum is a great time frame to experience that. Because if you're bouncing from relationship to relationship, that might be a telltale sign. Broad stroke generalization here, not saying it's a hard set rule for everyone, but a general, I think, kind of rule is if you're bouncing from relationship to relationship, then you're looking for a person to satisfy the deepest longings of your heart. Yeah. And until you put yourself in God's hands and experience his transformative work in your life, which is slow, the spiritual life is a lot slower than anything in our modern world, then you might not be ready to put your life in someone else's hands and to delicately hold their life in your hands, because you might be looking for them to satisfy something that they just cannot.
The first question, just based on what you all just said there, how do you know if you're like a serial monogamist, if you're going from relationship to relationship and it's a bad outcome every single time, it's a bad breakup, you know what I mean? And yes, it's good to take time away to reevaluate whether or not you're ready for a relationship. How do you know that you're called to a relationship and eventually a marriage? How can you even determine that that's your vocation if the results are, lackluster at best?
Well, that's a whole nother topic, determining your vocation, discerning your vocation.
Yeah.
So I'll just speak about myself. From the time I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to be a wife. I wanted to have a home. I never wanted to be a career woman, even though that was, starting to be the new faddish thing. I ended up being a career woman for most of my life, but I also then learned to be, wife and mom at the same time. But I always knew that I had a vocation to marriage. I didn't know how to get there, though, and that's the problem.
Yeah. Right.
So I think most people have a vocation to marriage. Mm-hmm. So I think we should leave that for another show and say, how do we get there? How do we get there, right?
I mean, and I will say, you guys, I'm going to be the voice of dissent, as I typically am in most situations.
Bring it on.
In most
Bring it
circles.
on. Bring it on.
Okay. In an ideal world, oh yes, take a year to heal, take a year to, do 7 retreats and a self blah, blah, blah. I love that. In an ideal world, that would be beautiful. But I know the types of women that I'm used to working with they really genuinely, deeply are looking for marriage, and they're deeply wanting a family. And a lot of the women that we're working with, a lot of them were freezing their eggs, but now, other things are coming up where they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know the moral implications of freezing eggs and all of that. So now it's even more pressing for women. I think it can almost be detrimental if a woman takes too much time out of the dating scene, because then she gets back out and then it's the time is going. I think for a woman to be in a closed season, I think 3 or 4 months. And I wanted to ask you guys about this so that we're preempting that they don't have to take this gap year. So preempting when they're in relationship and maybe not doing things that are going to bond them so aggressively, aka not sleeping with the men prior to marriage or cohabitating, what that looks like.
Okay,
so I just had to express my opinion.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I know I just dropped a bomb.
Rose,
I dropped
please.
a bomb. I'm dropping the bomb. All right.
Okay.
What are your thoughts, you guys?
Allie,
The dust is settling.
Tanner, please let me, because I am a woman.
Oh,
and
yeah, this is all you,
and I've
Rose.
been through that.
She knows.
Yeah.
You said these women are deeply desirous of marriage, right?
Yeah.
They're also deeply afraid, and they're running on fear, and fear blinds you. Fear blinds you and makes you stupid. And remember, I'm decades ahead of this, and I can look back now with wisdom and insight. A year is nothing. Now, of course, it seems like a lot when you're in your 20s and your biological clock is ticking. But are you getting married to have children? Is that the primary reason that you're getting married? I will tell you, in the work that I do with divorced couples, the people who got married primarily because it was getting late and their eggs were drying up and they wanted to have kids, which is a beautiful desire, the majority of them ended up in divorce 7 to 12, 15 years later, because the discernment to marry that person wasn't based on the relationship with that person as much as all the trappings that came with it. The home, the money was just right. The eggs were, we could have this number of kids. And this is where we're not trusting God to guide us.
Yeah.
I love that.
Tanner, please.
Can I drop a bomb on Rose's bomb?
Yes.
This is a
Do
bomb
it.
fest. My goodness.
Oh, gosh.
It's a war zone.
So I won't be able to feel that biological clock at the intensity that a woman feels, but I will say it is still present in men. I have many single men in their 30s, late 30s who feel that palpably. So I think we're wrong in saying it's just a woman thing. I do think women probably feel it more intensely.
Yes,
but
certainly.
if you're not willing to take the time to heal fully because of a fear of the time clock, then you're probably not in a place to discern clearly because of the time clock, to Rose's point.
Yeah.
I know, you guys, like, I love this. Are there guardrails, AKA, should they be living together? Is that a really great test? Or is it like, no, because then it feels a lot like a divorce. Should they be sleeping with each other? Where it's like, okay, let's test it out. Or is it like, no, because you're going to be bonded? And then tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are. Are there guardrails that can make a breakup just feel less absolutely devastating, heart, soul crushing?
The level of pain at a breakup is tied directly to the level of bonding in the relationship. How attached were we mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually, psychologically, financially? And when we live together, we are practicing at a pseudo marriage. And so all these bonds are forming. Financial bonds, legal bonds, social bonds, sexual bonds, maybe parental bonds at this point. And when there's a tearing apart of the relationship, you'll be gushing blood for a long time, longer than 3 months, that's for sure. So the trick is to know what you want and be very clear about that and move toward it, but not quickly and not forming those deep bonds. And that you don't live together, because we have enough scientific studies now. It's been a long enough time we've tracked it. Science itself proves that people who live together before marriage have a higher rate of divorce. And I know the why of that is because they're practicing a marriage where there's an open back door. So they get used to marriage, this relationship having an open back door. So after the big fancy expensive wedding, the open back door is still there. And that's what happens to a lot of people. Don't sleep together. And let me tell you, I've worked for decades with people with broken marriages, and part of the healing process is going back to what happened at the beginning, even your childhood, and taking a look at what you did or didn't do. And there are 3 things that 99% of people say. We didn't ask the tough questions, and we didn't talk about the important things. We got into bed too soon, and it blinded us and bound us together. And we didn't ask what God wanted.
Yeah.
That is so good. No, and Rose, it's so true. I know for me, when I was young, I always thought, because I was raised in the early 2000s where I was watching TV and just consuming all this media where it was like, oh yeah, of course, when you're in a relationship, the next step is moving in together. Of course, that's just what everybody does. And then the next step from that is getting engaged. Of course, that's what everybody does. But then very early on in our matchmaking practice, we really were like, okay, we're researching hardcore psychology of relationships. So I read like 1 million books. I read everything, and still am reading. It's a constant learning curve. But I remember reading this incredible book by Dr. Meg Jay, and it's called The Defining Decade. And it's all about the 20s. And I remember when I first read it, I was like 20. So I was like, oh, okay, this is my decade. I'm defining it. And a lot of what she said, I was very like resistant. I was like, not living with somebody. What are you talking about? But then I read and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. It's everything that you're saying. So, and I love those 3 things. I also, another quick question on that. Your first point was that they didn't ask the tough questions. What are some of those questions? Like, what are some of those tough questions?
Well, I used to do marriage prep weekends, and I would always ask this question of the audience. So I said, okay, you just got married in June, and now here comes your first Christmas, and your mother, guys, your mother wants you on Christmas morning at her house where you've always been to do all the big family traditional stuff. But your new wife wants to be over at her parents' on Christmas morning. Where are you going to go? And all of a sudden, I see the whole room. All the girls look at the guys, and the guys are like deers in the headlight, and the women are like crossing their arms. It's like, yeah, where are we going to go? So, and it's a funny thing, but we don't talk about what's our priorities. How are we going to handle money? How are we going to discipline the kids? What happens if I lose my job and I can't work? Do you want to go to work? How important is our faith to you? And, all that stuff. It's like, we would grill people for a job in HR department, but we don't talk about that stuff on a date. It's too soon. And I could tell you what I did with my husband. I broke all the rules on our first date. I didn't hold back, and I poured out and I said, I'm not having sex outside marriage. I'm not looking for a date. I'm looking for a spouse. I'm following my faith for the first time in my entire life. And I don't want you don't need to take me out to dinner. I can take myself. What are you looking for? Because I don't want to play games, and I don't want to use you, and I don't want you to use me. And he was like, whoa, I just wanted to buy you a drink, and I'm like, okay. And he goes, well, that was refreshing. And I go, well, thank you. And so that was our first date, because if he said no, and you're crazy, I never would have seen him again.
Yeah.
But I didn't want, I was at the age, I wasn't in my 20s anymore, but I was at the age, it's like, I'm done, man. I'm laying it out right at front. And if you don't like it, that was me. I wasn't that way in my 20s. I was afraid. I was so focused on, will he see me? Will he love me? Will I be enough for him? But when I began to realize that it's how God sees me, and I'm enough for God, and God gives me my purpose and my value, and he loves and adores and is delighted in me, then now I'm starting to look at you, Guy. What do you have to bring to the game? So my whole perspective switched from my 20s.
Men.
Yes.
I want to hear okay, so say a girl, I know you're both married, but goes on a date with you and just puts it out there. Like, would you
her
recommend
non-negotiables,
that?
her values?
Tell me your thoughts on that.
Okay. Personally, I think it really depends on the delivery. Do I want to be aligned with a woman on her values, on her non-negotiables, her vision for her life? Of course I do. But if it comes across in the first date as like an interview and I'm a candidate for a job, that's a real turnoff. That's a real turnoff. Sorry. Like I kind of want to suss out compatibility a little bit more on the first date as well. It can be both. You can be talking about your values and aligning on that, but dating should be fun. Early on too. I think it should be fun. I think it should be a little bit spontaneous. So it's both. It's both. If it comes across too much as like, I am only here to extract this amount of information from you, then it's like, okay, I'm out. Sorry. Like this is not it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tanner?
Tanner.
I'll give a slightly different perspective to that. G.K. Chesterton said, rules are meant so good things can run wild. I would find it very freeing because I would know the parameters by which I can enter into this relationship. I'd also feel maybe a little emasculated because I feel like guys should be the ones who do that up front. I had a very similar experience with my wife, Rose. First date, it was an awesome date. Took her to like a 5-course meal at 5 different spots. So we got like a little food at like a French restaurant, a little food at a Cuban place. And it was really great. And at the end of the date, emotions were both high. We could tell that we were both really excited about the relationship. But I told her, hey, there's no making out. I know where that train leads. We're not doing that at all. And just kind of laid it out there and laid out what I want in a relationship. And she really appreciated it. She was very attracted to that. And it kind of set us up to have fun in that relationship. Because it's not fun when you don't know if the other person is expecting something that you're not really wanting to do, or if you feel like you're pressured to do that. Like, that's not fun at all.
Right.
I love that. That is so beautiful. There's nothing more attractive to a woman than a man who knows what he wants and a man that is dating with intention. And when a man verbalizes that and he says it in a very just masculine, like solid way and you can practice this in the mirror, guys. You can practice it in the mirror. Like, I'm looking for my wife. Like, you're amazing. I'm having the best time with you. But I'm traditional. I follow, there's nothing better. And I say there's nothing sexier than a man with a plan as well. So well done, Tanner. You plan.
Really.
Yes. Yes.
Really.
I can't tell you how many people have told me they've used filters on dating apps to find someone of faith, only to find that Christian is just a label for them and not a priority.
If you've gone through that struggle, we're happy to tell you it doesn't always have to be like that. SacredSpark is a new dating app made specifically for Catholic singles who are serious about a lasting relationship built on faith.
SacredSpark engages you in real conversations with curated matches. The app's audio and video features give you a holistic view of who's on the other side of the screen, prioritizing intentional relationships over shallow first impressions.
And speaking of intention, the app's intention is clear. Connect you online so you can meet offline as soon as possible.
Are you Catholic and single? Download SacredSpark and start something good.
This is good. This is
Okay.
good. We're talking all
We
about
agree.
yes.
Yeah.
We're talking all about
for the most
today
part,
about
yeah.
putting yourself out there.
Yes.
Yeah, how becoming the right person to get out there and and look for and match with people of certain values and all these things. Align on that. I think that's great. But how are Christians able, where do we find people?
I think what's most important to you, that's where you begin. And I remember thinking if I wanted a good Christian man, I would go to church and go to the events at church. But just because somebody goes to church, that doesn't mean they've really integrated their faith into their life, and they could be the biggest weirdo,
Preach.
girls or guys. So I'd say church, but not church at the same time. Hold it loosely. But what I found in a lot of success is go to events or conferences where people have the same interest, because now it's a level up and it weeds people out. People are putting money down to go to those places. So that means it's important to them and they're trying to live it out. So, that's what I would say. Find those conferences, and that's where you should spend your money.
I've talked about this before, how if marriage is really important to you and finding your spouse, your wife or your husband, but you're unwilling to change anything about your routine, if you just don't have time to get out there, or you live in an area where there's not a lot of young adults, eventually rubber's got to hit the road and you got to make some sort of change. I know a lot of single people who are upset that they're single, but they live super remote places. It's like at a certain point, you got to move where people are, where you can meet people. And so sometimes, along with going to events and conferences, sometimes a big life changes is also something to consider.
Yeah. I
that's
dare
a
you to
great
move.
idea.
I dare you to move. Thank you,
You
Switchfoot.
know, people who have breathing problems, people pack up and move for really important reasons, right? If their health or their job, this is your whole future.
That's
and
important.
If it's that important, you're right,
Exactly.
Tanner. It's like, put your money where your
Yeah.
mouth is.
Yeah.
I love that. And also, Rose, I love the conferences thing. So as I said, I'm a matchmaker, and a huge part of my job is scouting and recruiting. I work with a small number of clients, but one of my passions is being a social butterfly. And I love going to different events. I love meeting people. So if we work with a client, I then stack my calendar based on what we're looking for that person. It's not easy finding these single men and women, but all you need is one, and putting yourself out there too, because you can't just go, right? You can't, if even me, if I just went and just waited, as magnetizing as I am, but the good guys are not approaching women. They're just not.
The women, we need to learn how to drop our hanky.
Yes.
Okay, here's the other thing. If we pursue, we set the tone for the relationship.
Come on.
Yes.
If we pursue, but that doesn't mean we sit there, and just wait and do nothing. We learn to drop our hanky, give them the look, laugh, flip your hair, whatever it is, all those techniques to let him know, I see you and I'm interested in you. And you don't have to say a word to do that. We got to drop the hanky, and that creates the safe space for the man who's cautious and concerned and a little hesitant. And the majority of men are, by their natural temperament. True alphas are the minority. So create the safe space for the man to walk into it.
I like that phrase, Rose. I think it goes to like giving each other nonverbal cues. I feel like we've lost the art of
Yes.
communicating without our words. I think it's because of technology and just having instant gratification whenever we want. We've lost the art of giving like a subtle little look and picking up on it. You know, guys are notorious for not picking up on that. But if you're in tune and you notice a girl looks at you and then maybe she looks at you again, like that should be an opening to go approach her, tell her your name, and start a conversation with her. Yeah, I think when you know you have the Lord and you know that everything's going to be okay, you're free to. If a human doesn't want to go on a date with you, it's not the end of the world because you have an infinite Lord who loves you.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Mick,
Yes.
tell us, how would a woman drop the hanky for you, dropping the handkerchief?
Oh my gosh. Well, usually it's wanting to talk to me. like genuinely, if you're picking up on, if you've entered into a conversation with a woman and she seems genuinely interested in you and what you're saying, and I've even had moments, like younger Nick had moments where I realize what I'm saying is not all that interesting. Like my jokes are not landing right now. This isn't like a real like good conversation. It's very like, I don't know, banal or whatever. And yet she's reacting like this is hilarious. Okay, that is such a great invitation. Like she is saying, it's not about what you're saying right now because we both know that ain't great. But I'm interested in you. I'm interested in talking with you more. Like that is like that's a great, I think that's a great example of a woman being so kind and generous with a man and telling him that she's interested without telling him she's interested.
Right,
you know, it's the way in which she carries herself around you. You know, it's all of these things.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. We teach the dropping the handkerchief technique. It's a very important technique for women to have. One of the elements that I love to encourage is instead of just beelining to the one person you find attractive in the room, it's just having an energy of talking to everybody. We always say like have some inadvertent opener. It could be about the dog. It could be about, the fight that just happened outside. It could be about the speaker at the event. It could be anything, but like, oh, have you heard the speaker before? Or and then being like, oh, are you from around here? Like, are you from around here? So just engaging in conversation. But then it's, so it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier.
And I think yes, the ideal is that you can get to a place where that's easy for you, but that takes a lot of practice and cultivation, certainly. So Rose and Tanner, would you share some stories with us about maybe some times when you were working on your social skills or putting yourself out there and it was awkward, it was embarrassing, maybe you fell flat on your face, it was really good? Because that can be really discouraging for folks, especially folks who don't have a lot of dating experience.
Yeah.
They put themselves out there and all of a sudden they have a conversation and they totally blunder it. It goes really, really bad. They feel humiliated. It's like, okay, I am not going to that conference again. I'm not going out on a blind date again. I'm not doing any of this because this was so embarrassing. I feel like really humiliated. Do you guys have some stories about maybe that happening to you personally?
I actually never had that. Because I'm like you, Allie. I like people in general. And being an extrovert, I'm very at ease in going up and talking to anybody. And if I get a negative response from them, that they roll their eyes or they turn and walk away or snicker or whatever, it's like, okay, on to the next one. I'm wired that way. But for people who aren't, here's my counsel. Learn to ask questions. Because that way you don't have to present yourself and say, well, I'm this or I'm that. Just say, hey, what did you think about the speaker? Or, hey, what did you think about this hotel that we're in? It's beautiful, isn't it? Or, and just open the door. Again, that's dropping your hanky kind of a thing. Asking questions is a good way to let the other person respond. And when they give you the bare minimum, they're not interested in you.
Yeah, but sometimes guys get a little nervous too. Like if a really pretty girl is asking them questions.
That's true. That's true.
Sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I like this. Yes.
But I will say, I've known a lot of guys in my life, and I will say when there are few things that a guy like makes him feel like a man more than when a beautiful woman is asking him questions and seems interested in him. Like it's such a beautiful invitation to let him shine, and it's gonna make you both have a better time.
No, it's so true. It's so true. I guess I'm clocking back to some situations.
Oh boy,
Tanner,
what do you
Tanner's
think?
ready to say something. Tanner,
Yeah.
You have something to say, don't you?
I was just thinking, you know, in college, this was, you know, the pre-confident Tanner, the Tanner who was a little bit lost, a little bit insecure, and a little bit just kind of wandering. This was when I also got into acting, and the first real time I had to kind of put myself out there was in a scene with a girl, and just like it's kind of like, you know, a romantic scene, a flirty scene. Where I had to like kind of put the charm on her and woo her, if you will. And so like really the first time I kind of put myself out there with a woman was in front of a class and in front of a really loud vocal teacher, and just her kind of like coaching me through like how to like approach a woman and like not be weird or awkward. Was very, very terrifying and very, very uncomfortable, but I'm very, very grateful for it looking back. And honestly, if you find yourself in a pattern in your life that it's really hard to feel comfortable having a conversation or woo a girl, taking an improv class or taking an acting class, just putting yourself in a low stakes environment where you can actually receive some coaching is honestly some great advice. And I would highly recommend it
that's
for
good.
anyone.
Yeah, in
great.
that moment, from that class experience for you, Tanner, like what did that do for you? How did that change you from before or after when you walked out of it? What was it that you learned?
I mean, we have everything inside of us. You know, some people say like, "Oh, I'm not funny," or you know, "I'm not smart." It's like, no. We are made in the image and likeness of God. We have every single capability inside of us at any moment, and so it kind of helped me tap into, for lack of better words, like a smoother, more confident side of myself that I just dismissed as not being there.
Very true.
And so,
Yeah.
it just kind of like it opened my eyes to that. And it obviously, you know, it wasn't overnight where I was like smooth the next time I talked to him.
No.
But it opened the door for the process to happen.
That's
awesome.
a super helpful reminder. None of us are born like perfectly confident and charming and have the best social skills and all. Like some people, yes, it seems are born more talented in that regard versus others, but we all need to work on our skills, on our social skills, on our skills when it comes to dating. These are things that everybody has to practice. And at one time or another, it is awkward and it is tough to put yourself out there. It is a difficult thing to do at one time. So you just need to do it though.
Yeah.
And social skills are like a muscle. And I feel like we're exercising them at a lesser rate than ever in today's time because of the technology. Again, I don't want to harp on technology, but I really do think it's having serious sociological consequences. And just like you would go to the gym and work out and make sure you maintain your strength or whatever, I do think we need to practice being social beings.
Amen.
You know, we just need to practice having conversations.
Yeah, I actually do want to talk about that just briefly if we can. What do you think social media is doing to how we interact, how people think about interacting with others? Like what is changing because of social media?
I think an intensified pressure to have your best at every waking moment, because you can decide whether you post something, you can decide to cut something short or, you know, tail it off on the end. You can put out your very best. And when you have like this unrealistic, you know, best case scenario version of yourself that you're trying to live up to in the real time when conversation's not going how you thought it would go and they ask you a question that you weren't prepared for and all these things, it can kind of whack you out a little bit. And so I think it's only amplifying the pressure to be this kind of like heightened version of yourself.
Yes. And do you feel that that's really holding people back from actually like taking the first step to just put themselves out there in the real world?
100%.
Yeah.
And it's fear of rejection is at the root of that. Fear of rejection
Exactly.
this is what we're all dealing with. Fear of rejection. If that person doesn't want me, do I have value? Am I enough? Am I lovable? Do I fit into the world? These are big existential questions that we all have. And to your point, Tanner, back to when we know who we are in the image and likeness of God, and he's a real person to us, and he loves us and is with us and has given us our purpose, then we're depending less on people to fill that void.
We've talked through, you know, a couple options for getting out there and meeting people in person, which is great. That's maybe the gold standard, but we are living in reality and social media is here and it's probably here to stay, and dating apps are the most prevalent way that people connect and meet. You know, it's great to meet on a dating app and then go see each other in real life, you know. So that's the reality of what we're living in. I want to talk through a little bit. We did share a little bit about dating apps and whatnot, a little bit of the etiquette, but I kind of want to press this a little bit more. So Tanner and Rose, how should you present yourself on a dating app? And how long should you be talking to someone on a dating app before you meet in the real world?
Well, you should be honest always.
Right.
And like we've been talking about, not be too militant in your demands of what you're looking for. Have some flexibility and some openness. I wouldn't get real super specific, but on the essentials, I would be specific.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to see it warm and inviting and playful or interesting, something that's different about you. And then, I did this one time because we're all visible, right? We're all on social media and everything. I actually put a picture of myself with absolutely no makeup whatsoever. And this is horrifying for most women.
Yeah.
But I challenged
Sounds
myself.
like a nightmare.
Right. But I challenged myself to overcome the pride and the fear of rejection to do that. And I was always proud of myself for doing that. Now, I don't know what it really did, but that's just something to think about. And I don't think you should be on the dating apps forever. I actually coach some people, dating coach, and there's one guy I'm thinking of, and he hasn't made a move. He's looking at all these pictures. He's interacting, and he hasn't made a move to ask anybody out for coffee in a year. So he's stuck in a loop of fear and doubt.
Yes.
So I would say, once you get the essentials, go for it. Start the conversation and then move to the telephone and then move to person. You should know in a few months, right? Tanner, what do you think?
Yeah, dating apps can be very, very intimidating because like I said, we are made in the image and likeness of God. We have everything inside of us. We're very complex. And to limit ourselves to 6 photos and maybe a few sentences to capture the entirety of who we are feels very, very daunting, to say the least. And so I remember, when I was on dating apps maybe 10 years ago, I would just constantly kind of change it or change my profile, update photos, change, biographies. That was a way for me to at least kind of feel like I'm depicting somewhat of who I am. So if someone feels, super oppressed by the limited options that you can do on a dating app, just kind of changing it constantly, tweaking it, not being obsessive about it, not putting your identity in it, but having fun with it, I think is super important. And then the goal of a dating app is to be off a dating app. And so I feel like, as soon as you click with someone, I think it's important to try and meet with them in person as soon as you can, because I find that there's like a hyperbolic curve or a parabolic curve. I forget which one. It looks like a bell, where there's a moment where it gets like really exciting, but then it drastically drops off if you just continue in the chat for long.
Yep.
And so something that had potential could be soured by just the longevity of not seeing each other in person.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say that the timing there is super important. Once you find you're clicking with someone on an app, don't wait too long to meet in person.
Yes. Yes, I will add, because we have studied the algorithms on dating apps for now almost 14 years. So what we found is if somebody has been on a dating app for more than, honestly, even a month, 2 months, and they're like, oh, it's going stale, I'm not getting new matches, fully delete the app. Fully delete the app and restart with your new photos and your new description boxes.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
Good
Yeah,
advice.
because it clears out and then you're presented as new and you're given another chance in the algorithm. What we've also found is that photos are the most important element. But also we found that, like, to your point, Rose, using playful phrases, positive. If there's anything negative in a profile, it's like, boom, low. It's like, and women write this. Women think that they're like, oh, this is genius. No, I'm going to tell them, don't reach out to me if you XYZ. No, don't put that in your profile. No, do positive. But photos are really important. Getting a professional photo shoot is also totally fine, but then combining it and mixing it with activity shots too. And like travel, if you're on a camel, that's great. Conversation starters, all of that. But the photos have been proven to be the most important elements.
Yes. So you want to present a good image of yourself.
Yes.
Talk to people quick and then get off.
Yes. And
there you go.
We also say 3 days max. 3 days of going back and forth, max.
That's great.
Max.
That's great.
Because
like what
after-
Tanner was saying,
like
don't
what-
let it go too long. Don't let it go
Exactly.
too long.
Because also huge red flags. If somebody is continuing to just chat, it becomes pen pal. You're in pen pal zone, and then it's like, all right, buddy, what's going on? We say to the girls, use this. If you are talking to a nice guy, he seems lovely, but he's not asking you out. Say, hey, listen, I'm brand new to the dating apps, or I'm newer to the dating apps. How long are we supposed to chat before meeting up in real life?
Love
so
it.
it's like putting it, then it's like in his court, then he's like, oh, we should go out on Friday at 7. It's like, oh, what a wonderful idea. What obviously, we're letting him lead, but we're also giving him
Opportunity.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Tanner and Rose, with our last few minutes here, something I'd really like to do is hear from you on this particular scenario that we're really talking about today, which is the idea of somebody who is in their early, mid, maybe even late 20s. They have just finished college or grad school, or they've done an internship, but they've entered into a new phase of life where they're young working professionals. Maybe they've moved to a new city. Maybe they've moved back to their old city where they grew up. This kind of situation. What is the best advice you could give them if you were having a conversation with them on putting yourself out there, going out on dates? How do you do it?
Sometimes you just have to say, you just do it. You just go out, tell all your friends, I'm looking, just go everywhere and find out what you like and what you don't like. Just like as Tanner was saying, just be active, get out there and just do it. Just don't have sex. Don't go too far. Don't have the drugs and the alcohol, all the stuff that lowers our inhibitions and makes us blind. It just brings, it's fun in the moment, and it's disastrous in the end.
Yeah. Good rules are meant so good things can run wild, as G.K. Chesterton said.
Right. I love that quote.
There's a reason the church teaches what it teaches, not because it wants to stifle our fun or oppress us in any way, but so that we can experience the maximum amount of joy that we possibly can. It's a win-win situation when you're dating. This is the best advice that I have for any guy out there is if you ask a girl out and she says yes, great. You got to go on a date. You might have gotten one step closer to finding your spouse. If she says no, great. That embarrassment or that anger or that frustration that is elicited in you, you can use and unite to the cross of Christ to bless your future spouse. So you're either finding your future spouse or you're blessing your future spouse. It's a win-win. So get out there and make a move. And if you're a lady, if no guys are asking you out, then you can use that embarrassment or that frustration or that anger, and you can unite that to the sufferings of Christ for your future spouse. Or you can say yes to a date. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Or
either way, please go ahead, Rose.
Can I just throw this in? Get your brothers, your cousins, your friends who are all men and say, what do I need to do to improve my chances of having a guy ask me out? It's that, be courageous in that. We go to our girlfriends, but sometimes we need to go to the guys to get the honest truth.
No, I think that's true. Go to trusted guys who like are not in your dating pool, or like have no chance of being in your dating pool at all, and who love you because they will be truthful. Yes. They will be truthful if they care about you. I think that's fantastic advice.
Such good advice.
And Tanner, with what you were saying, if you get the date, if you're the guy or the girl, amazing. That's fantastic. You're one step closer to the spouse. But also, if you experience rejection, that's okay too, because it's making you a more resilient person. Suffering is not, a bug. It's a feature of this life. It's something that has to be embraced. That's the purpose of our faith, is to make sense of the suffering. That's why Christ came. So I think this everything you both have said really rings true with me. I think this is great advice for our listeners.
Rejection is God's protection. I love that.
That's good.
Rejection is God's protection and his redirection.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Yes.
That's good.
Great. Thank you both so much for coming on.
Guys.
I've enjoyed this conversation so much. We've dropped a ton of truth bombs. We've talked so much about bombs. It's kind of crazy. Bombs and grenades.
It's like an episode of Jersey Shore. Remember? Grenades. Oh, Lord, help us. I'm sorry.
Yes.
You guys, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yes,
Thanks.
take care.
God bless.
Thank you,
God
guys.
bless.